In our curriculum, what we have done nowadays, we train our teachers to work with visually impaired children. Also, we try to make them aware about the teaching strategies or teaching pedagogies for working with other type of children with disabilities, whom we call nowadays Divyangjan.
Hello, Namaste. This is Vinita Kumar, and you're watching me on India.com. So today I have with me a very special guest. Dr. Swati Sanyal is in the conversation today. She is the course director at Durgabai Deshmukh College of Special Education, which is affiliated to University of Delhi. Dr. Sanyal, welcome to India.com. First of all, I would really want to know from you what is the course that you are directing, and if you can just speak about the course in detail for our audience.
We are running a B.Ed Special Education course, which is affiliated to Delhi University. Just now you had been informed. And in our course, we have certain core papers, like in any general B.Ed program you would study. It's basically a teacher preparation course. And nowadays, you are probably aware that visually impaired children will not only go to the special schools, they can be admitted in any regular school. So nowadays, even if in your neighborhood school, you might find children with visual impairment, they are studying there. So when they are going to a regular school to study with other kids, then it is more so important for us to prepare our teachers to work in an inclusive setup. See, in our curriculum, what we have done nowadays, we train our teachers to work with visually impaired children. Also, we try to make them aware about the teaching strategies or teaching pedagogies for working with other type of children with disabilities, whom we call nowadays Divyangjan.
I think all of us and the audience watching this would really love to know about how do you think the entire, this Braille technology evolved in helping, say, visually impaired students? How has that happened?
If you talk of Braille, let me go a little back into the history. There was a time when people with disabilities were not considered that they are educable. Right. There was a time when they were actually being separated from the mainstream. Then a time came when what we call in our language a time of world status, when we started giving protection to the people with disabilities and started giving them refuge in asylums or in churches or in mandir and all that.
Right.
Then came this beautiful thing, which we call the period of emancipation, when people with disabilities, with their own kind of ability, showed us that they can really do a great deal of work which anybody else could do, and they can also do it.
Right.
Under that, during that time, you could say this Braille script was invented by Louis Braille, and right. It was in 1820s. He was born in 1809, and by accident he became blind. But with his own effort, he made this script. It's not a language, it's a script for reading and writing.
You are talking about the little ones, you can still shape them because they are, they have the young brains there, but what about say even, thode se bade bacche jinko, those who have shaped their minds in a certain way? How do you coach them, and how do you coach your teachers to coach those kids jo thode age mein bade hai, maybe teenagers, and who also want to maybe, educate themselves? How do you shape them?
I will tell you something. If a child has gone to a school for the blind from the very beginning, special schools to begin with,
yeah,
they learn Braille from the very beginning, from the initial years only.
Right.
But if you get a child who has become blind at a later stage,
right.
Of course, prior to becoming blind, he was a sighted person. He or she was a sighted person. So right. Naturally, his tongue is not that way developed. And it is a trauma to accept blindness. So first accepting blindness, that I will not be able to see anymore, and then preparing himself or herself to accept Braille. Yes, it is a difficult proposition, but of course, once you start understanding that Braille is something which will make you independent, which will make you able to read and write again, they start showing interest. But yes, if you become blind at a later age, reading Braille becomes a little difficult, because Braille you read with your touch. And once you become old, your tactual power is not that flexible.
Right.
Like if I start reading Braille at this age through touch, I do read Braille, but I do read Braille through my eyes, which is not the correct way of reading Braille.
Right.
But if I become blind at a later age, I have to depend on my touch, and it's difficult.
Right.
Another group of children with visual impairment who find Braille at times very difficult to accept is the children who are having some usable vision, low vision. They may not have enough vision to read and write print, but they can move around using their vision, see things at a distance maybe.
Right.
So making them accept Braille at times becomes very difficult, even if they know that they might lose this whatever little vision they have now. Still, it requires some time to make them understand that accept Braille.
Right.
Moreover, nowadays, technology has come in a very big way, and we find that many people are not showing much interest in learning Braille. They find it very cumbersome or tedious, and
Right.
they try to depend on audio.
Right.
But we always advocate and try and make it ensure that a person with visual impairment should learn Braille the way we seeing people should learn print. We simply don't depend on auditory things, because we can also hear, but
Right.
still we depend on print. We use technology, still we learn basic alphabets. Similarly, the person with visual impairment should learn Braille, because that will give them the required independence.
Right. So, ma'am, have you encountered any cases personally, or have you known or heard of the cases where, say, people, kids have really learned the Braille and they have started communicating through it, and yet there are some apprehensions? I want to understand what are the apprehensions that, some kids might face even after learning to communicate through Braille.
I don't think those who have started learning Braille from a very early age has much apprehensions about learning Braille. But what I find nowadays that Braille books are very bulky.
Yeah.
One volume of a regular book might take 3-4 volumes of a Braille book. So at times they find it difficult to carry from one place to another. So they try to depend on other modalities once they grow up.
Right.
And in an inclusive situation, if they are not very comfortable to reveal their identity as a blind person, and or maybe a visually impaired person, it often happens with the low vision kids. Even if they don't find reading print a very viable option, but they try to continue with that because they don't like to accept Braille as a medium of learning, because somewhere down the line, Braille is associated with blindness. That mindset needs to be changed, because it is not that Braille is something which you are doing just because you are blind. Braille is something you are doing because you are a literate person. You can read and write, and this is your modality for reading and writing. There is nothing wrong in that.
Right.
It's perfectly all right. You are becoming independent, and that is the most important thing. It is giving you the independence. It is giving you the independence in communicating with others.
Right.
You can read your own books. You can write your own things. You can note down your class notes. So you are becoming so much more independent. So that is why once you understand that, and once you appreciate that, little bit of apprehensions, whatever you had in mind, what will people think about me? How can I carry such a large book, a huge book with me? All those apprehensions will then disappear.
Right.
Only thing is you have to love your communication mode. If you think that it is like nowadays, you find even the sight children, they are not reading books so much. They are more comfortable with the technology. And if you give them a storybook to read, they would prefer it to listen from their tab or something. Similarly, who would like to read from a book which is so bulky? They they would prefer that auditory mode.
Right.
But once you know the beauty of reading yourself, enjoy yourself reading, you would definitely love reading Braille.
Right.
I'm talking of a visually impaired person.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Ma'am, I also then want to know about the module of the course that you are teaching to the students. And also, is this module the same all over the country? Like, with, say, people, the kids at school, they know that, they have to clear, say, 12th, and then they have to pursue the higher studies. And, that's the pattern, that's a clear pattern. So what is the course module like for students who are visually impaired?
Is the same with the children with visual impairment. They also appear in the board exams. They follow the same curricular. A little bit of what we call reasonable accommodations may be required somewhere. There are certain exemptions and certain modifications in the examination system. Like for the board examinations, my students can use a scribe. He will dictate whatever needs to be written, and the scribe can write it. And they can even write on the computers themselves. So that is also allowed. For some questions based on diagrams, like suppose if I give you a question to write, draw the parts of a human eye and label its different parts. There, a visually impaired child will not draw the parts of an eye, but will mention the different parts of the eye. So some exemptions for questions which consist of diagrams are given. So there is a whole lot of guidelines by CBSE, what is to be done with them for the examinations. Otherwise, curriculum, they are following the same. And if you are asking me, I don't teach in the school, I'm in the teacher education program, as I told you. Our curriculum is standardized by a regulatory body called Rehabilitation Council of India. So barring a few changes here and there, all over India, we are following the same curriculum for teacher preparation for the visually impaired. And it's a important and a compulsory component of our teacher education program, where every teacher trainee, whether a sighted person or a visually impaired teacher trainee, all of them need to learn Braille. Not only like in my place, it's Hindi Braille, it's English Braille, and also Braille for reading and writing mathematics. It's all a matter of 6 dots, but we have different structures for, like in print, one will look different from ONE1. But here it is all made up of 6 dots. So when we write one, and when we write in words ONE1, that will be different. Like numerals will be different from the literary Braille. So that also my teacher trainees need to learn. And it's a compulsory component, they need to pass in that.
Ma'am, I'll end this with this question that I really wanted to ask. It is believed that, and I've heard, and most of us have heard that, visually impaired people have this sense to observe and absorb things around them in a better way. So have you also felt the same? Is that also a strength that you're talking about?
This is a common stereotype. When we teach our students, we say that you will come across this kind of stereotypes, where people would say the person with visual impairment has a tisra netra, chhatha indriya, sixth sense. But being in the field for such a long time, I have realized that these are myths. These are not the reality. If you use your one sense organ to its fullest, from your childhood onwards, you're always depending on your hearing sense. So naturally, it will become better. So it depends on how much you're using your capabilities. You use it, you learn it better. Like, if I tell you, when the doorbell rings at your house also, most of the time, we know who has rang the bell. We say, "Ye dhobi aaya hoga," or maybe the milkman has come. Because everybody has their own style of ringing the bell. You are a sighted person, still, by using your sense of hearing, you are able to say. Even a little child would say, Papa's scooter has come. Because the particular sound he or she was looking for and has been listening to carefully, he now knows it. Similarly, on telephone, we can recognize the voice. We don't see the person, but by the voice, we could say who has called us up. So it is all because of our using a particular sense to its fullest will definitely develop it. Our right, if I'm a right-handed person, I use my right hand more, so that becomes more predominant, and I won't be able to work so well with my left hand because I'm using my right hand more. So it has a more capability than the left hand. Similarly, what I have seen from since their childhood, they have been depending on other senses. So those senses have developed. If you don't give them an opportunity to use the other senses, so they will also not be having their sixth sense or tisra netra. That is more of a myth,
right?
More of a stereotype. That's what I feel.
Right. And surely we need to break those stereotypes, ma'am. And I think what you said and what you taught us today will genuinely help us to understand a little more into this sense. Thank you so very much for having this conversation with us. More power to you, and maybe work in a better inclusive environment. Thank you so much.